May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separate from the sacred happiness that is free of sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. The Dharma is deep and lovely. We now have a chance to see, study, and to practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning. Chapter 8. Immediate and Gradual. At the time, the Grand Master was living at Jewel Forest Monastery in Cao Chi, while Great Master Shen Shu was at Jade Spring Monastery in Qingnan. Both schools flourished in their time, and everybody called them Hui-neng of the south and Shen Shu of the north. Thus, there was a division into two schools, immediate and gradual, of the south and north, and people did not know the fundamental aim. The Master said to the crowd, "The teaching is originally of one source, but people may be southern or northern. The teaching is of one kind, but perception may be slow or fast. What are called immediate and gradual? The truth has no immediacy or gradualness, but people may be sharp or dull, hence the terms immediate and gradual." Nevertheless, the followers of Shen Shu often criticized the Grand Master of the Southern School for being illiterate, questioning his merits. Shen Shu said, "He has attained the wisdom that has no teacher, and has profoundly realized the highest vehicle. I am not his equal. Furthermore, my teacher, who was the fifth Grand Master, personally handed on the robe and teaching to him. How could that have been for no reason? I regret that I cannot make the long journey to go associate with him, but vainly receive the favor of the nation. You people should not linger here. Go to Cao Chi to seek resolution." One day, Shen Shu instructed his disciple, "CH8, you are bright and very knowledgeable. You ought to go to Cao Chi for me, to listen to the teaching. Pay attention and remember whatever you hear, then come back and tell me about it." Following the instructions, CH8 went to Cao Chi. There, he joined in the studies of the congregation without saying where he had come from. At the time, the Grand Master announced to the crowd, "Now, there is someone stealing the teaching concealed in this congregation." CH8 then came forth, paid his respects, told the whole story. The Master said, "If you have come from Jade Spring, you must be a spy." He said, "Not so." The Master said, "How can you not be?" He said, "Before I said so, I was. Now that I've said it, I'm not." The Master asked, "How does your teacher instruct people?" He said, "He always instructs people to stop the mind and contemplate quietude without lying down." The Master said, "Stopping the mind and contemplating quietude is pathological. It is not Ch'an. Sitting all the time constricts the body. How does it help toward truth? Listen to my verse. During life it will sit, not lie. After death it will lie, not sit. A set of stinking bones. How can it establish success?" CH8 bowed again and said, "I studied the way with Great Master Shen Shu for 9 years without realizing enlightenment. Now, hearing a single talk from you, I immediately attained the original mind. For me, the matter of life and death is serious. Please, be so kind as to teach me more." The Master said, "I have heard your teacher instructs people in the principles of discipline, stabilization, and wisdom. Please tell me how they are practiced." CH8 said, "Great Master Shen Shu says that not doing any evil is discipline. Doing good is wisdom, and purifying the mind is stabilization. That is how he teaches. What doctrine do you teach?" The Master said, If I said I had a doctrine to teach people, I would be fooling you. I just untie bonds according to situations that is provisionally labeled samadhi. The sort of discipline, stabilization, and wisdom your teacher speaks of are truly wonderful. But discipline, stabilization, and wisdom, as I see them, are different. Ch'an said, discipline, stabilization, and wisdom should only be of one kind. How can there be any different? The Master said, your teacher's discipline, stabilization, and wisdom are for people of the great vehicle. My discipline, stabilization, and wisdom are for people of the supreme vehicle. Understandings are not the same. Perception may be slower or swifter. Listen to what I say and see if it is the same as what he says or not. What I teach is not apart from our own essential nature. Teaching apart from nature is called talk about forms. One's own essential nature is always confused. We should realize that the functions of all things come from our own essential nature. This is the true principle of discipline, stabilization, and wisdom. Listen to my verse. The mind ground without error is inherent natural discipline. The mind ground without folly is inherent natural wisdom. The mind ground without confusion is inherent natural stability, neither growing nor diminishing. The inherently indestructible, though the body come and go, there is fundamentally samadhi. Hearing this, Ch'an apologized. Then he presented a verse saying, the 5 clusters are an illusory body. How can illusion be ultimate? Yet, when I turn around to head for true suchness, the method turns out to be impure. The Master agreed with this, then went on to say to Ch'an, your Master's discipline, stabilization, and wisdom encourage people of lesser basic intelligence, whereas my discipline, stabilization, and wisdom encourage people of greater basic intelligence. If you realize your own inherent essential nature, you do not set up bodhi, or nirvana, or liberation or knowledge. There is no thing to attain. Only then are you able to set up myriad teachings. If you understand what this means, it is also called embodiment of Buddhahood, and it is also called bodhi and nirvana and liberation and knowledge. People who see essential nature can set these up or not set them up. They are free to come or go, without stagnation or inhibition. They act according to need and respond as spoken to. Their personal projections, seen everywhere, are not apart from their own nature. Thus they attain the samadhi of sport and free spiritual powers. This is called seeing essential nature. Ch'an then addressed the Master again. What is the meaning of not setting up anything? The Master said, with no error, no folly, and no confusion in one's inherent nature, prajna is observing, moment to moment, thought after thought, always detached from the appearances of things, independent and free, complete master of adaptation. What is there to set up? Your own nature is self-realized, immediately realized, and immediately cultivated, without any gradual process. That is why there is no setting up anything. All things are nirvanic. What steps are there? Ch'an paid obeisance and volunteered to be an attendant, day or night. He never slacked off. The monk Ch'e was a man from Jiangxi. His original surname was Chang, and his given name was Xingshang. In youth, he had been a wandering swordsman. After the southern and northern schools were divided in their teaching methods, even though the masters of the schools were non-partisan, followers of theirs became competitive and partial. At that time, the followers of the northern school set up Master Shen Xu on their own as the 6th Grand Master, and were jealous of the fact that the Grand Master Hui-neng was known throughout the land to have inherited the robe. They hired Xing Shang to assassinate the Master. Knowing of this beforehand by telepathy, the Master placed 10 ounces of gold by his seat. That night, Xing Shang entered the Grand Master's room to kill him. The master stretched out his neck to the sword. Xingxiang slashed 3 times but failed to make any wound at all. The master said, "A straight sword is not crooked. A crooked sword is not straight. I only owe you some money. I don't owe you my life." Xingxiang was so startled he collapsed. It was a long time before he revived, and when he did, he begged for mercy and repented of his wrong. Then he wanted to leave the world and become a monk. The master gave him the gold and said, "Go away for now, lest the disciples do you harm. Come back someday, in a different guise, and I'll take you in." Xingxiang did as instructed, fled during the night. Later, he had become a monk, disciplined and energetic. One day, remembering what the master had said, he made a long journey back to see him. The master said, "I've been thinking about you for a long time. What took you so long?" He said, "Previously you forgave my crime. Now though I am a monk and practice intensely, after all, I cannot repay your favor. How could I think of transmitting the teaching and liberating people? I frequently read the Nirvana Sutra, but I still don't understand the meanings of permanence and impermanence. Please be so kind as to give me a brief explanation." The master said, "What is impermanent is the Buddha nature. What is permanent is the discriminatory mind with all sorts of bad and good states." Xingxiang said, "What you say is greatly at odds with the text of the sutra." The master said, "I transmit the seal of the Buddha mind. How dare I differ with scripture?" Xingxiang said, "The sutra says the Buddha nature is permanent, but you say it is impermanent. Good and bad states, even the aspiration for enlightenment are all impermanent. Yet you say they are permanent. These are contradictions, confusing me even more." The master said, "In the past I heard the Nirvana Sutra recited by the nun Wu Qinzang, and then expounded it to her. Every word, every principle was in accord with the sutra. What I have said to you is no different." Xingxiang said, "My knowledge is shallow and unenlightened. Please edify me in detail." The master said, "Don't you realize? If the Buddha nature were permanent, then what good or bad states would there be to speak of? There would never be anyone aspiring to enlightenment. That is why I say it is impermanent. This is precisely the path of true permanence, spoken of by the Buddha. Furthermore, if all things were impermanent, then everything would have its own nature, subject to birth and death, while true eternal essence would not be universal. Therefore I say things are permanent. This is precisely the meaning of impermanence, spoken by the Buddha. Because ordinary people and cultists cling to false permanence, while people of the 2 vehicles think of the permanent as impermanent, altogether making 8 inversions. Therefore, in the complete teaching of the Nirvana Sutra, Buddha refutes their biased views and openly explains true permanence, true bliss, true self, and true purity. You are now relying on the word and turning away from the meaning, misunderstanding Buddha's perfect sublime final statement as if it meant nihilistic impermanence and fixed stagnant impermanence. Even if you read the sutra 1,000 times, what would be the use? Suddenly, Xingxiang was greatly enlightened. He uttered a verse saying, "Buddha said there is permanence. Because of the mentality clinging to impermanence, those who do not know expedient technique are like picking up pebbles in a springtime pond. Now the Buddha nature has appeared. Without my expending any effort, it is not bequeathed by the master, and neither have I obtained anything." The master said, "You have penetrated. You should be named Ch'ai, intent on penetration." Ch'ai bowed in thanks. There was a youth named Shen Hui from the cow clan of Xingyang. 13 years old, he came from Jade Spring to call on the master. The master said, "Friend, you've come a long way, a hard journey. Have you brought the basis along? If you have the basis, you should know the host. Try to express it." Shen Hui said, "Non-dwelling is the basis. Seeing is the host." The master said, How is it appropriate for you, a novice, to speak glibly? Shen Hui then asked, when you sit meditating, do you see or do you not see? The master hit him 3 times with his staff and asked, when I hit you, are you pained or not? He replied, both pained and not pained. The master said, and I both see and do not see. Shen Hui asked, what is it to both see and not see, thoughts of good and thoughts of bad? The master said, my vision is such that I always see the excesses and errors of my own mind, while I do not see the right and wrong or good and bad of other people. Thus I both see and do not see. You say you are both pained and not pained. What about that? If you are not pained, you are the same as a wood or stone. If you are pained, you are the same as an ordinary person. So you get angry and resentful. The seeing or not seeing you spoke of just now are 2 extremes. Being pained and not being pained are birth and death. You don't even see your own essential nature, yet you dare to play with people. Shen Hui bowed and apologized. The master also said, if your mind is confused and you do not see, you ask a teacher to seek the path. If your mind is enlightened, then you see your own essential nature and you cultivate practice based on the teaching. You are confused yourself and do not see your own mind, yet you come asking me if I see or not. I know my seeing for myself. How could it substitute for your confusion? If you can see yourself, that could not replace my confusion either. Shen Hui bowed again, more than 100 times, seeking pardon for his error. He worked for the master diligently, never leaving his side. One day, the master said to the congregation, I have something with no head, no tail, no name, no label, no back, no front. Do you recognize it? Shen Hui came forth and said, this is the original source of all Buddhas, my Buddha nature. The master said, I just told you it has no name or label, then you immediately call it the original source, the Buddha nature. Later on, when you have a bunch of thatch covering your head, you will still just be a follower of intellectual understanding. After the death of the Grand Master, Shen Hui went to the capital and popularized the Cao Qi teaching of immediacy. He wrote notes revealing the source, which was very popular in this time. This was Chan Master Ho Tse. The master saw the critics from various sects, all with ill will, had gathered at his assemblies in great numbers. Pitying them, he told them, people who study the way should eliminate all thoughts of good and thoughts of bad. What has no name that can name it is termed intrinsic nature. The nature that is without duality is called the true nature. It is on the basis of true nature that all the methods of teaching are established. You should immediately see for yourself. Hearing this talk, all those people paid respect and asked to serve him as their teacher.